Hello, everyone, and welcome to the inaugural episode of Somber Dawn Studios' DawnDev podcast. Since this is the very first episode, we are going to discuss what this podcast is all about and what we want it to become. This show is for everyone. For non-game devs, we want to give a behind-the-scenes look at what it means to be a game dev studio. And for game devs, we want to share our experiences to help each other learn. We are certainly not industry experts. We've been in the industry for under a year, actually. So this show will be very cooperative in nature, and we hope to learn from each other. We hope to learn from other game devs just as much, if not more, than they learn from us. For the format of the show, the only scripted segment will be the intro, and we will have some prepared discussion topics. Other than that, we want to show the show to be unscripted and to have the most genuine discussion possible. The goal is to have many guests on the show, so if you're a game developer, game reviewer, Twitch streamer, YouTube content creator, or any other kind of industry professional who wants to be on the show, don't hesitate to email us at contact@somberdawnstudios.com. So, with this being our first podcast, I'd like to do introductions first. My name is Chad Spangler. I am originally from Southeast Missouri, went to college at Missouri State in Springfield, Missouri, then went to work for that college shortly thereafter with a degree in IT service management. Started out as a programmer and then kind of ventured more to the business side. But started as a tech for Missouri State University as my first full-time big boy postgraduate job. And then I was kind of always felt like I was destined to come to St. Louis. I always loved the city as a kid. Always wanted to go there, was constantly visiting there as an adult. So I moved to St. Louis a little over a year ago at this point. And that's my story up to this point. So joining me are our creative director, William Chappell, and our lead dev, John Grady. So William, what is your background?
Well, I was born here in Sikeston, and I've lived here. I moved to Cape Cape Girardeau a couple years ago, but I've moved back recently. And I don't really have much of any kind of in-industry background. I've always liked to draw and do some art-related stuff, but I had pretty much given up on any kind of possibility of being involved in game development before I was even in high school, because I thought, it's one of those things every kid wants to do. It was a pipe dream. And about a year ago, after watching John Grady, our lead developer, basically teach himself how to code, I come to the conclusion, well, if he can teach how to develop a skill necessary, then maybe I could too. But yeah, I have no kind of college degree, and I work full time at a factory, but otherwise I spend a considerable amount of time either between my family or on this venture of ours.
Awesome. And Grady, how did you get to this point? Why are you on this show, man?
All right. Well, kind of a similar thing in high school. It was like, hey, yeah, everybody wants to be game dev, and okay, everybody wants to do it. So there's probably not going to be a lot of jobs. Our generation is going to graduate, and they're all going to be game devs, and that's a bad idea. So I studied some graphic design stuff in high school, mostly just because it was interesting and techy and fun. I did that with you, actually. I think, didn't I, Chad?
Yeah. I was definitely in that class. That was a great class. I use it all the time now.
And anyway, so from there, I went and did history and anthropology study at CMO, and middle of the Great Recession, kind of wanted to change majors and didn't have the money. So I was like, okay, well, screw it, I'll go work. And, bounced around from a few jobs here and there, and got tired of that, taught myself to write some computer code, and did some kind of industrial information systems, really very boring, form to database connection type work.
Right.
Probably the most exciting thing I got to do was play with Google Graphs and make data turn into pretty pictures.
Riveting.
Did that for a little while. And then just kind of ended up in a situation where I could go do some IT work in Sikeston, and really not get to ever write code again, which I got to the point where I just couldn't do that. I was going to go crazy if I didn't get to, solve problems, as it were. And so I was just like, screw it, I'll start a game dev company. I'll get a day job and make a game company on the side until I can make the game company my day job. And here we are after releasing our first game and, looking towards the future.
Yeah. So that's an important thing to note, I think, is that we're pretty much all part-time. I would consider Grady the most full-time of us, but, we certainly all have our day jobs. And we've stuck it out for at least almost a year now. So unless something catastrophic happens by December, I think I think we'll pass that 1 year mark. So what do you hope to accomplish as a company or as an individual with this podcast? For me, I'm the marketing guy. So, I've been watching videos like, work out loud, always, the key with social media or blogging or anything like that is consistency. And, I feel like in addition to just, learning and discussing with other game devs and such on this podcast, that's going to help us out a lot with that because, it's a weird thing you're like, okay, no problem. I'll take some screenshots of my game. I'll get some high quality GIFs. I'll post those. You can't just post those over and over and over and hope to grow a following though. And that's something I learned pretty early on. It's like, man, that's, you can't just hammer away those screenshots and those GIFs and hope that, that's going to do it. Cause it's not, you gotta vary your content. You gotta, talk about stuff, share other people's stuff. So that's kind of what I want out of this podcast is just to, give to other game devs, give our followers, our subscribers something to, listen to, something to, take in that's not just constant screenshots and GIFs all the time, something a little more valuable to them, I suppose. So, Will, what are you hoping to get out of it?
I think it really is more of a visibility thing for me. It doesn't matter how many great games that we make. If nobody finds out about who we are and the stuff we make, then they can never experience it. Mm-hmm. And so anything that we can do to try to connect with the community, to connect with other developers, connect with fans or people in general, I think it can do nothing but help our visibility and kind of be able to get those games to the people that we think would enjoy playing them.
Right. Grady?
Well, call me not the business-minded guy in the room, but really the same reason I got a hold of you guys in the first place. I'd like to see, 1, 2, 100 people out there in the world unabandon their dream. Don't quit your day job, but, pick up a keyboard and learn to write some code and make some games. Yeah, absolutely, you can do it. You may not be able to make money with it. You may not be able to make a career out of it, but for a certain group of people, it is, once you start, you'll never be able to stop. It's writing computer programs is, I can't even put it into words. It's easier than not doing it for me.
Yeah.
And I would encourage anybody to try.
I feel like you hit on the core of, what this podcast is going to be about and also kind of what our company is about in general is, we, like you said earlier, we all just kind of like in high school, and there's a blog post about this I'll put in the description as well. We all just kind of, all of us want to make video games. That's what you want to do as a kid, right? As a kid and as a teenager, you want to make video games, but then you're like, that's not realistic. I'm going to go do this other thing and make some money, right? But, it's becoming easier. Like there's several videos online. It's like, well, what do you have to do in order to, and we've been asked several times at live shows of our game, how'd you do this? Like, how'd you get started? And we just said, we downloaded Game Maker Studio and we started making stuff, like I went to college, even completed it or whatever, started out as a programmer, as a computer science major, went more towards the business side. But nothing in college, and I'm not putting down college. It's, it's for some people, not for some people, doesn't, it's neither here nor there. But as far as, preparing me for doing this and potentially, I wasn't involved in the development cycle for the first game, but I will be for future games. What prepared me most is simply just doing it, and with the marketing stuff as well, like, the Twitter, the Facebook, getting Twitch set up and all that is the main thing was just doing it. Like you can take all the classes you want, but until you there's always little details that you're gonna miss, like watching videos, taking classes, like that you just need to get on the ground and do it. And it costs almost nothing nowadays. Like Game Maker Studio, you can get the demo version for free. Is that correct?
Yeah, you can get the demo version for free. I don't believe you can like save executables with it or anything, but you
Right.
can absolutely make a small game. It's got an object limit, so you can only have so many objects, but you can absolutely make a small game and test it and play it and show it to your friends and enjoy it without spending a dime. Um, and then when you do have something that you need to either be a bigger project or you need to be able to export it as some kind of executable and sell it, even then it's relatively cheap for professional grade software. I want to say a standard license is something like $300, which for professional software is nothing. I mean, I
Right.
know it's not nothing, but it's in this realm. It is.
Right. And people have this notion that in order to do something like this, you have to go to school for like a million years, like with super specific, not really, like, while you're, like you said, don't quit your day job immediately to, don't throw things away to go straight for it. But you can do this without investing an insane amount of money. It's going to take, if you want to make a serious game, it's definitely going to take quite a bit of time. But as far as getting into it, you don't have to have this crazy formal background. You can download Game Maker Studio, go on YouTube, start watching tutorials. Game Maker GML is a super easy language, and you can start doing it. And that kind of takes people aback when we say that at live shows, is that the idea of just doing it without any like classes. We kind of go Shia LaBeouf on them. Just do it. Like, don't let your dreams be dreams. And I want to touch on this. That's kind of the same thing that happened with the art, because William, you did most of the art, correct, William, or pretty much all of it?
Yeah.
You had no formal art training either, and within a year, we made a game which a lot of people have said, I like the aesthetic of it. It looks great. So, how did you go about starting, making art for this game?
Well, I just went online and Google searched for a pixel editing program and just started doodling with it basically. And it's one of those things where people can tell you how to do certain things. People can educate you on the best practices for certain things, but when it comes to creating something, making something, the actual experience that you get from sitting down and just doing it, just messing with something until you get something you kind of like, is it's unreplaceable.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the number of times I've gone, we're working on a prototype for game 2 at the moment, and we don't quite want to talk too much about that, but just to say that its first prototype was using a unreasonable amount of system resources, and I think probably the most enjoyable thing I've done so far in writing algorithms and things for this game studio has just been the iterative process of taking this ungodly resource hogging algorithm for comparison checking and slimming it down and figuring out little cheats and things I can do to make it more efficient, to now it uses virtually no system resources.
Right. And that's a big thing. Iteration is huge, not just in, development, but when you're doing pretty much anything like this, like same thing with my marketing materials. Like I send a tweet, it doesn't go over too well, like nobody really likes it, nobody retweets it. Well, what can I do better? Iterate on that. Like the people really liked this one. What was right about this one, and how can I make it even better? And that kind of emphasizes that you got to just do it. And that's kind of what you have to do in the professional world too, because nowadays, like, not putting down degrees at all. I've got one, obviously. Don't want to make my own degree feel worthless. But work experience is so valuable, and it's not just necessarily working for this a formal company. Like, for instance, one of my interviews I didn't get the job for, but one of my interviews, one of the side duties was going to be a bit of graphic design. So I brought in, the stuff I had done in high school in that class you were talking about earlier. I brought in some of the stuff I did for a club in college, and I showed them to them, and they really liked it. And I think that helped me in that interview. It wasn't like formal training. It wasn't formally taught past high school, graphic design training, but it was just stuff I had done, and people, work experience doesn't necessarily have to be in a super formal setting. You just have to have something that you can show that you've done, add to a portfolio.
Yeah, and we had talked on this a little bit, when we started this, and you were talking about your college experience and um, Paige's college experience and everything, and really the difference between the theoretical actually being in there and having to write production code that's got to live and has to be editable and changeable and adaptable to all these different situations and meet very specific needs. Um, it really is. It really is very different making something that has to do a real job, a real purpose, versus making something to tick off a couple of assignment points. I mean, not
Right.
to rag on college. My little brother's in Mizzou's computer science program right now, and if I needed some kind of like movement algorithm or geometry algorithm or something, he absolutely could write that algorithm better than I could, way better.
I think
But in terms of actually managing a project from birth to completion, that making something to ship,
Mhm.
he'd be completely lost.
Yeah. I think that's kind of, college does a lot of things, but it doesn't do everything. And I think that's for anybody, in high school listening to this, that's kind of a message I'd like to put out there is like I do not regret going to college. Like, it gave me life experience. A lot of the classes were useful. I had, learned how to communicate with people. I was a 100% complete extrovert before college, and it kind of turned me into, being able to get myself out there and such. Like, it has a lot of uses, but it won't give you everything. I think a lot of people, myself included at one point in my life, had this idea that, well, you graduate high school, you go to college, you get your degree, you get a job. Like, it's not that way, at least not anymore. Like, used to be, maybe, historically, like, you kind of was, you could just a college degree was good enough to get you anywhere you wanted to go. But you kind of gotta make yourself stand out now. Like, it's college. Yeah, I think that summarizes it well. College does a lot of things for you, but not everything. And clearly, I have a college degree. Grady had some classes. William doesn't have a college degree. We're all a part of this. We've all contributed. It's not, one of us having more classes than the other hasn't affected. And like, so I feel like the big theme of this podcast, this first episode, is, just do it.
Anybody can just sit down and work on it, and eventually you can develop the skills yourself that's necessary to make your game or project, whatever you want to do.
Yeah, I mean, I like I said, we don't want to come off like we're anti-college. Absolutely,
Right.
You should go get a degree. But while you're getting that degree, while you're doing your classwork, also make something real. Have a side project and see it from whatever it starts off as all the way to where you're ready to call it done, where it's a real thing that does something meaningful.
Yeah.
And then you'll have the best of both worlds and be prepared to really go build stuff.
Yeah, and not only will that, give you something to show to employers, but it'll also just like give you such a sense of, such a sense of accomplishment. Like, I'm really proud of this game we've made. Like, it, we obviously, you guys made it. I've been mainly done the marketing because I joined in February. But I'm super proud of where we've gotten in less than a year, and that we did it completely on our own. I feel like if we were a big professional studio or whatever, and we all individually went to work for this studio, that I wouldn't feel as accomplished as I do right now, because we put all of it in place.
Yeah, there's definitely something to be said for not having, an existing support structure or architecture or publisher, and it makes it harder to survive and harder to make money. But there's definitely a level of achievement just from getting the game finished and released and not drowning before you get there.
Right. Let's see here. So we kind of touched on this already, but this was my second topic I had written down. What made you become an indie game dev? Like it, um, we already discussed this quite a bit, but like I wanted to, as a kid, right? That's the dream. Like, not maybe this is a different question. Not maybe what made you become an indie game dev, but what made you? At what point did you feel like I'm an indie game dev? What was that? What was the accomplishment? There's like, man, I'm in it. Will?
For me, it was. This might sound kind of funny, but it wasn't until we were at I mean, actually making a game and then putting it on Steam and selling copies to people wasn't quite enough for me. Even it wasn't until we were actually relating experience with other professionals in the industry that made me really feel like, oh wow, I'm part of something that is a lot bigger than just us.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and I would tend to agree with that. I think just because there are so many people out there who, they release iPhone apps, or, they throw some little thing on Steam, and that's okay. Yeah, they're game devs, but in terms of being a game dev company, in terms of actually being a studio, I really felt like, going to the live event, making the marketing material, that kind of stuff really, for me, solidified it a lot, because then we weren't just some app monkeys kind of churning out stuff and releasing it on the internet without ever interacting with the culture or the community. I mean, we were there. And not only
You felt like
we were
more
there,
than just a hobbyist.
yeah, not only were we there manning a booth, not only were we there going to these panels and listening to stuff and talking to other people, but we had some useful suggestions for some of our other people who were there, who maybe hadn't thought about marketing as much as we had. And I think we left the thing thinking, next year we can probably do a panel or two. Like, we've learned enough to feel confident in what we're doing and to know at least some good advice to give people.
And I think it was, for me, it was, I mean, this is just one point. Like, I've obviously, felt like I was a game dev or part of a game dev company before this, but like going to the bank to sign our, checking account thing, I'm like, oh my God, this is a real thing. Like,
fun fact, when you go to set up a business account, they do a background check to make sure you're not a terrorist. I didn't know that. I was like, wow, okay.
Guys, I gotta go.
It wasn't even just that. Like, it's they had a questionnaire that specifically asked, "Are you or have you ever been a terrorist?"
I'm retired. Like, I was into the whole terrorism thing, but it just wasn't my bag. Like, yeah, I got over it. It was a phase. Yeah, I think.
But yeah, like, actually, and that's another thing too, because I filled out the paperwork with like the Secretary of State for our LLC filing, and actually like signing official documents, creating a legal entity and stuff like that. It starts to become a lot more apparent that you're not just doing this for fun. This is a much bigger deal.
Right. So I think that's a pretty good first episode. We kind of covered what is the DawnDev podcast going to be. We talked a lot about basically just going out and doing it instead of, don't get me wrong, we plan a lot. We do plan a lot. We watch a lot of videos. We, learn as much as we can.
We understated about tutorial videos on YouTube.
Right.
One of my favorite programming memes is, I can skip 5 minutes of planning if I do 2 hours of extra programming.
Right. And that's planning is important, but a lot of the times just doing it is important. And I think that's kind of the theme of the podcast as well is, we're doing this right now, and we're not positive exactly what we're going to talk about in a couple of weeks, but we're going to do it. And I think, doing this inaugural podcast has even given me some ideas about what, I want future episodes to be about. So I think listeners have gotten a pretty good idea of what we're going to be talking about in this podcast, who we are, where we came from, background. Unfortunately, the lead level designer for Intrusion Protocol, Josh, could not be here. Also, the sound guy Steven could not be here, but we'll be the cast of characters on this podcast is not going to be constant. Sometimes it's going to be me and a guest. I'll probably be the only consistently 100% here host of the podcast. But sometimes it'll be me and a guest. Sometimes it'll be me and studio members like William and Grady. We'll see where it goes. But yeah, it's a good. I think this was a good first episode. Any final thoughts?
Well, just if you have any questions or anything you'd like to see us cover in a future podcast, leave it in the comments on YouTube or send us an email or anything, and we'll try and get to it. This is partly so that we can kind of encourage people to try and do stuff and expand their horizons.
And yeah, that's the thing too, is if you send us messages, emails, you contact us on Twitter, any of our socials. At least at this point, we're pretty solid at answering and reading every one of those messages.
Right. Yeah, contact@somberdawnstudios.com is our contact email. I have the socials displayed there on the YouTube video, and you can find us relatively easily on those. But yeah, this has been the first episode of the DawnDev podcast. Like to thank William and Grady for coming on, and we will see you next time.